A gun bill is expected to move to the floor of the Senate today, minus one key proposal by President Obama to ban military-style semi-automatic weapons. Neil King is here with an update from Washington. Hi, Neil. Let's talk about exactly what the bill will include.
Well, we're not really sure exactly what the bill will look like. And by the way, it has yet to get into committee, so it's certainly not coming onto the floor today. What we've been told is that this bill is going to be somewhat stripped down. It's going to have background checks, the push for universal background checks, for some new limits on the trafficking of guns across state lines. But what it distinctly won't have, we're told, is any of the so-called assault rifle ban language. And the idea that Harry Reid and other senior Democrats have is that the most contentious issues, particularly that provision, would be something that Dianne Feinstein of California or others would attempt to put onto the bill on the floor of the Senate and would be debated there.
How long could it actually take then to reach the floor of the Senate?
I think the thinking is it's going to take a few weeks, and that by early next month, a piece of legislation should come to the floor of the Senate. This basically reflects a sort of realism, I guess, on the Democratic side, that they don't want to come out with a kind of maximalist bill first off, but bring something out that they think could pass, and then see if others can convince the Senate to increase the size of the scope of the bill from there.
Neil, the president will be speaking later today in Minnesota about his gun proposals. Why did he choose that state?
You know, it's interesting because they haven't been all that clear on exactly why they've chosen Minnesota. It seems, looking at it, that he's decided to go to a state where there's a high number of hunters, a large percentage of people who have hunting licenses and use guns for those purposes, but is also a state that has been mulling a lot of different ways to go after gun control, and cities like St. Paul that have some of the more interesting and more kind of complete gun registration rules and gun background check rules. So I think that's mainly the reason, but they haven't amplified that for us.
Interesting. A lot of this about perception. Speaking of perception, the White House releasing this photo of President Obama, I think from back in August, of him skeet shooting at Camp David. What has been the reaction on both sides of the fence about this photo?
You know, this is a classic thing. The president had said a week ago or so that, yeah, he goes skeet shooting all the time at Camp David, and that led this whole huge call. Well, if you do it all the time, show us some photographic evidence. So days and days went by. Then on Saturday, they released that photo. It immediately drew all kinds of jeers from gun folks on the other side saying, well, for one, it doesn't prove anything, and look at the way he's holding it, and he doesn't seem to be really shooting skeet, and this is a PR stunt anyway. And so I don't know whether it necessarily did them much good, but it gave everybody a lot more to talk about.
What about the issue of background checks in regards to any new gun control legislation, Neil? I mean, I know there's been some back and forth about where the NRA's current chief has stood on this issue. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Well, it's interesting. You know, Wayne LaPierre back in 1999 went before Congress and gave a very, very fulsome push, saying that the NRA was fully in support of every background check in every setting, including at gun shows, which is one of the main loopholes. A big group of mayors during the Super Bowl actually put up an ad in certain markets raising that testimony. Now the NRA has come out completely against any push for increased background checks, saying it would only lead to possible government confiscation of people's guns, etc. So they've done a real about-face on that front, though I think it is one of the things that is most likely to get through Congress, if anything gets through on the gun front.
All right, Neil King, thanks so much for that, and we'll have more on WSJ Live with President Obama's speech in Minnesota later this afternoon.